Hello, friends. I am your host, Matt Gore, and welcome back to the History Revolution podcast. The purpose of the History Revolution is to help homeschool parents teach their children American history. Today, we will meet a guy who was tough as nails, bold as a lion, and a little bit wild, Andrew Jackson. He was the 7th president of the United States, and his story is packed with adventures, battles, and some big decisions that still matter today. I want to remind you that our new course, The Carolina Colony Before the Founding, is now available. I also want to remind you to join our newsletter to stay up to date with our latest episodes, blogs, and specials. The links for our course and the newsletter are in the description. Now let's dive into the life of Old Hickory. Okay, picture this. It's 1767 and Andrew Jackson is born in a tiny log cabin near the border of North and South Carolina. His family were settlers, folks who left Ireland to start a new life in America. But life wasn't easy. Andrew's dad died before he was even born, so his mom raised him and his 2 older brothers all by herself. Growing up, Andrew was scrappy. He loved wrestling, running around, and getting into trouble. He wasn't big on school. People said he'd rather fight than read a book. But he had grit, and that grit would carry him a long way. When Andrew was just 13, the American Revolution broke out. That's the war where the colonies fought to break free from England. Andrew and his brothers joined in. Super young, right? He became a messenger, riding horses to deliver secret notes for the soldiers. But then things got rough. He and his brother were captured by British troops. A British officer told Andrew to shine his boots, and Andrew said, no. The officer slashed him with a sword, leaving scars on his hand and his head. That made Andrew hate the British forever. Sadly, his brothers and mom died during the war, leaving him an orphan by the age of 14. Imagine that, alone in the world, but ready to take it on. So what does a tough kid like Andrew do next? Well, he grows up fast. He studies a little law, becomes a lawyer, and moves to Tennessee, a wild frontier full of forests, rivers, and new opportunities. There, he builds a life, buys land, and starts a farm called the Hermitage. Andrew also becomes a fighter, literally. He gets into duels, which were like showdowns where 2 people shot pistols at each other to settle arguments. One time in 1806, he dueled a guy named Charles Dickinson, who had insulted Andrew's wife, Rachel. Andrew got shot in the chest, but he stayed standing, fired back, and won the duel. That's how he earned the nickname Old Hickory, tough like the hickory tree. Pretty intense for a future president. Now let's talk about Andrew's breakout moment, the War of 1812. This was a war between America and Britain, again. Andrew became a general in the army, leading a ragtag group of soldiers, including frontiersmen and Native American allies. His biggest moment came at the Battle of New Orleans in 1815. The British were attacking, and Andrew's team built mud walls, dug in, and fought like crazy. They won a huge victory. Hundreds of British soldiers were stopped, and Andrew lost hardly any men at all. Kids, this made him a national hero. People cheered his name from Tennessee to Washington, D.C. That fame launched Andrew into politics. In 1828, he ran for president and won. He was the first president who wasn't from a rich, fancy family. He grew up poor, fought his way up, and promised to stand for the common man, farmers, workers, and everyday folks. When he got to the White House, he threw a huge party. People crowded in, eating cheese, breaking furniture, and breaking windows. It was wild. Andrew loved that energy, and he wanted government to work for regular people, not just rich people. But being president wasn't all parties. Andrew had big ideas and big fights. One was about the Bank of the United States. Think of it like a giant piggy bank for the country's money. Andrew hated it. He thought it helped rich people and ignored the little guy. So he shut it down, saying that the bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it. That made some people cheer and others mad. What do you think? Should a president have that much power to change things? Okay, now here's where things get tricky. Because Andrew Jackson made some choices that maybe weren't so heroic. First, there's the Indian Removal Act of 1830. Andrew wanted more land for settlers, so he forced Native American tribes like the Cherokee, Creek, and Choctaw to leave their homes in the southeast and to move west to what's now Oklahoma. Thousands of Native Americans had to walk hundreds of miles in terrible conditions: rain, cold, no food. It was called the Trail of Tears, and many did not survive. Andrew said it was progress, but it was awful for those Native American families. Historians still argue about it today. Was this just, or was it villainous? Historians still argue about this today. Was he evil for doing this, or was this the just thing to do for the American people? Andrew was president for 8 years, until 1837. After that, he went back to the Hermitage to live out his life. His wife Rachel had died right after he won the election in 1828, and he never got over it. He spent his last years farming, writing letters, and arguing politics. On June 8, 1845, Andrew Jackson died at the age of 78. They buried him next to Rachel under a tree at the Hermitage. So what is Andrew Jackson's legacy? He's on the $20 bill. He made America stronger in some ways, like beating the British and pushing for regular people's voices and rights. But he also hurt a lot of people, including Native Americans on the Trail of Tears. He was tough, brave, and stubborn, but not always fair. All right, now let's wrap up this episode with a challenge. Imagine that you're Andrew Jackson's advisor in 1830. What would you tell him to do concerning the Trail of Tears? Do you think you could offer up a better solution? History isn't just facts. It's about thinking, what if? Thank you, friends, for joining me again on this journey through the life of a man who saved a young nation in battle and went on to lead it as president, Andrew Jackson. Now, don't forget the links in the description to join our newsletter and to learn more about our new course, The Carolina Colony Before the Founding. If you're watching on YouTube and you like this podcast, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, give us a 5-star review. God bless you all, and we'll see you again next week.